Pregnant, abandoned, and rejected. Her own father gave the obese girl to a mountain man. Sometimes the people who should protect us are the ones who cast us aside. Sometimes the pain that breaks us leads us straight to those who will finally see us as whole. In the wild wilderness of Pine Valley Ridge, a father named Samuel Thornfield dragged his pregnant daughter Beth to the mountains and handed her over to a man twice her size, a towering mountain man named Cole Greystone. People whispered it was her punishment. They said it was the end of her story, but they were wrong, because Cole didn't see shame when he looked at Beth. He saw courage. He saw someone worth cherishing, and for the first time in her life, Beth was truly safe. Hello, my dear friend. This is Jasper Ashwood, your narrator of Mountain Tales. Before we start, make sure you subscribe and drop a comment below telling me where you're tuning in from. A big hug to you all, and I hope you enjoy the story. The morning air in Pine Valley Ridge was already crisp and harsh by the time Samuel Thornfield kicked open the front door of his weathered cabin. "Get out here, Beth," he shouted, his voice rough from years of drinking whiskey and louder from years of disappointment. "Don't make me say it twice." Inside, Beth Thornfield, 21 years old and heavy with child, tried to pull her one red dress over her swollen belly. The fabric stretched too tightly across her frame, but it was the only dress that still fit. Her cheeks burned with a mixture of shame and terror. Her fingers trembled as she tied the ribbon beneath her chest. She hadn't looked in the mirror in weeks, not since her father had stopped speaking to her, except to hurl accusations or bark commands. Not since her mother died and left her alone with a man who now saw her as nothing more than a disgrace. She stepped onto the wooden porch, squinting against the mountain sun. Her father stood there, arms crossed, black hat casting shadows over his weathered face. "You ready?" he asked. Beth's lips parted. "Where are we going?" Samuel didn't answer. He just turned and walked toward the old wagon hitched to a sturdy mule. Beth followed, waddling slightly under the weight of her body and the child she carried. Her stomach pressed against the seams of her dress. Her hands instinctively cupped it, protective yet uncertain. They rode in silence. The mule's hooves crunched steadily on the mountain path as pine-scented winds blew past them. Beth watched the tree line, towering evergreens, rocky outcroppings, an eagle soaring overhead. Then a silhouette emerged ahead. A man, a giant even from a distance. He looked almost mythical, like he'd been carved from the mountains themselves, broad-chested, standing like an ancient oak beside a split-rail fence, muscles defined like they'd been hewn by nature, arms thick as tree trunks. A weathered leather hat shadowed his face, but she could sense his gaze before she saw it. Beth's breath caught in her throat. Cole Greystone, the mountain man the valley whispered about. They said he wrestled bears with his bare hands, that he once fought off a pack of wolves with nothing but an axe, that no woman ever lasted more than a few days at his remote cabin. Her father pulled the wagon to a stop. Samuel climbed down and walked straight up to the mountain man. "You still good on our arrangement?" he asked. Cole said nothing at first, just looked at Beth. She froze, not knowing where to place her hands. Her dress clung to every curve of her. She imagined what he saw. Soft flesh, swollen feet, a face too round and gentle, eyes too timid to meet his. But Cole didn't flinch. His jaw shifted slightly. "I am," he said, his voice deep as mountain thunder. Samuel turned back and waved her forward. Beth sat frozen in the wagon. "I said, come on," he barked. She looked at her father, then at Cole. Her hands shook again. "Don't embarrass me now," Samuel hissed. Beth climbed down one leg at a time, carefully lowering her body onto the rocky ground. Dust clung to her worn boots. Samuel grabbed her by the wrist, tugged her forward like a piece of cargo. She nearly stumbled but caught herself. Cole watched, unmoving. "This girl," Samuel said, placing her in front of the mountain man like she was livestock. "Ain't got nowhere else to go. Don't ask questions. Don't come back crying. She's yours now." Beth's breath caught. The words stung like winter wind. She turned toward Cole, barely able to lift her chin. "I don't know how to hunt," she whispered, "or trap much. I'm not good at mountain things." Cole stared at her for a long moment. His arms crossed. His chest rose slowly with breath. Then finally he said, "You don't need to be." Samuel let out a bitter laugh. "Don't say I didn't warn you," he muttered, turning back to the wagon. "She's your burden now." And with that, her father left her. No goodbye, no backward glance, just the sound of wagon wheels creaking down the mountain path until the pines swallowed him. Beth stood in silence, unsure whether to weep or collapse. The mountain wind tugged her dress. Her knees trembled. For a moment, the shame consumed her entirely. Then Cole moved. He stepped past her slowly, opened the wooden gate, and motioned toward the small cabin beyond. "You'll stay there," he said simply. Beth followed him through the gate, her hands pressed under her belly. Inside the cabin, it smelled like pine and earth. Clean, lived in, but not cluttered. One room, one bed, a table, a fire that crackled warmly. Cole pointed to a small couch near the window. "You can rest there." She sank into it without a word, the cushions sighing beneath her weight. He walked to the stove, poured her a cup of water, and set it gently on the table beside her. Then he turned to leave. Before he reached the door, Beth finally asked, voice shaking, "Why did you agree to take me?" Cole paused, his hand on the doorframe. He didn't turn around. "Because someone needed to." And then he walked out into the mountain air while Beth sat there, heart pounding, wondering what kind of man she'd just been given to and why he hadn't looked at her like she was a burden. Not even once. Beth didn't sleep much that night. She sat curled on the couch beneath a thick wool blanket, one hand resting protectively on her belly, the other clutching the edge of the fabric like it might anchor her to this new world. The quiet was so profound, it almost hummed in her ears. A strange kind of silence she'd never known back home, where shouting and slamming doors were daily occurrences. Outside, owls hooted in the distance. The fire crackled softly in the hearth. Cole hadn't said another word to her after he left. She didn't know where he'd gone. Maybe to a barn, maybe to sleep under the stars. She didn't know what kind of man he was, not yet. But he hadn't raised his voice, he hadn't called her names, and he hadn't looked at her with disgust. That alone was more kindness than she'd seen in months. By morning, Beth had drifted into a light doze, but the smell of pancakes and venison roused her from sleep. Her eyes fluttered open to soft daylight spilling through the cabin's single window. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. Her father hadn't let her take a single bite before dragging her up the mountain. She sat up, blinking, adjusting to the light. That's when she saw him. Cole standing at the wood stove, wearing a plain flannel shirt now, sleeves rolled up, massive hands working a skillet with practiced ease. A second plate already rested on the small wooden table. Pancakes, venison strips, thick slices of bread, a cup of water, a folded napkin. He didn't glance over at her, didn't bark orders or ask questions. He just said quietly, "You can eat if you want." Beth blinked. She hadn't expected a plate. She hadn't expected warmth, but her body moved before her mind caught up. Slowly, cautiously, she pushed herself off the couch and waddled to the chair. She sat down, knees pressing wide beneath the weight of her belly. "Thank you," she murmured, cheeks burning. Cole still didn't look at her. He simply gave a small nod and returned to the stove. Beth took a bite, then another. The food was simple but warm and satisfying. She hadn't tasted pancakes like these since her mother passed. She held back tears. Halfway through the meal, Cole finally sat across from her with his own plate. For the first time, she could really see his face. It was ruggedly handsome, square jaw, bearded cheeks, a scar near his temple. His eyes were dark and unreadable, but not cold, not unkind. He didn't stare. He didn't even seem curious, just calm. Beth found herself blurting out a question before she could stop it. "You live up here alone?" Cole chewed slowly, then swallowed. "I do." "For how long?" "Since I buried my pa 8 winters back." Beth lowered her gaze. "Sorry." Cole nodded. "He wasn't a gentleman, but he taught me to work, build, survive." She looked at her plate, unsure what to say. Cole finally asked, "How far along are you?" Her hand moved instinctively to her belly. 8 months. He nodded again. "You got pain some?" "Not too bad yet." "You can rest here as long as you need," he said simply. Beth's throat caught. "You don't even know me." "I don't need to," he said. "You're carrying life, you've been hurt, that's enough." Beth blinked fast, not ready to cry again. Not in front of him. Later that day, Cole went out to split firewood. Beth watched him from the porch. His broad back moved with each swing of the axe. Sweat glistened across his neck. Each strike echoed like thunder into the mountain air. She wasn't sure why, but she felt secure watching him. Her body still ached. Her ankles swelled badly by afternoon. But Cole brought her a pair of boots that were softer than her worn ones, and a basin of warm water. Without a word, he set it down near the porch, then disappeared. Beth soaked her feet. The water turned cloudy with dust. That night he gave her the bed. "You can't sleep on a couch that size with a belly like that," he said. "But where will you? I built this place with my own hands. I'll manage." He spread a blanket on the floor near the fireplace, lay down without complaint, and said nothing more. Beth lay in the bed for hours, staring at the wooden ceiling above her, belly tight, heart even tighter. A week passed, then two, and something began to shift. Cole didn't ask about the baby's father. He didn't press about the scars hidden behind Beth's softness, the wounds left by her father's rage, her town's shame, and the whispers she'd grown up hearing. Instead, he let her sit beside him while he carved fence posts. He showed her how to mend leather straps and boil herbs for pain. He added more cushions to the porch rocker so she could sit more comfortably, and told her where the extra wood pile was, "In case I'm out and it gets cold." Beth found herself speaking more each day. About her mother, about the way her hands used to smell like lavender soap, and how she braided Beth's hair before Sunday service. She talked about the meadows behind their house where she used to hide after chores, pretending she was someone else, someone beautiful, someone wanted, and Cole listened, always listened, never judged. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the mountains in gold, Beth sat in the rocker, belly rising under her dress, and Cole stood fixing the porch rail beside her. She cleared her throat. "Do you think?" Her voice faltered. "Do you think a girl like me could be a good mother?" Cole didn't look up, but he answered without hesitation. "I think the ones who've been hurt the worst often love the deepest." She looked down at her swollen hands. Cole added, "You already protect that child like she's precious, that's what matters." "She?" Beth whispered. Cole gave the faintest smile. "Just a feeling." Beth looked out at the mountains, and for the first time in months, her heart didn't feel like a bruised thing barely holding together. It felt like something beginning. The days at Cole's mountain cabin began to fall into a peaceful rhythm. Beth would wake slowly, her body heavy, but less tense. Her ankles still ached, and her belly grew heavier with each passing morning, but her heart felt lighter. There were no harsh words, no slammed doors, no sideways glances filled with judgment, just the soft creak of the cabin floors, the distant whistle of wind through the pines, and the steady presence of a man who said little, but made her feel seen. Every evening, Cole would chop wood or work the fence while Beth watched from the porch, her swollen feet propped up on a stool he built just for her. Sometimes he'd bring her a small handful of wildflowers without saying a word. She'd place them in a chipped jar on the windowsill where the light caught the petals and made the cabin feel like a home. And every night after she was settled in the bed and he stretched out by the fireplace, she would whisper, "Thank you." He never answered out loud, but some nights in the silence she'd hear him shift and murmur back, "You're welcome." It wasn't until the third week that Cole said something that truly unraveled her. It was after supper, fried potatoes and beans, when Beth slowly stood from the table, wiping her hands on her dress. "I feel useless here," she admitted, eyes on the wooden floor. "You do everything. You feed me. You give me shelter. I just sit and get bigger." Cole leaned back in his chair, arms folded across his massive chest. "You're growing a life," he said. "That's work I can't do." Beth gave a weak smile. "Still, I wish I could help." Cole nodded toward the porch. "Come tomorrow. I'll show you the herbs we dry for the livestock. You've got gentle hands, might do better than me." She blinked. Gentle hands. She hadn't heard herself described with a kind word she couldn't even remember. "Okay," she whispered. The next morning, Cole showed her how to tie bundles of dried sage, how to separate wild chamomile for teas that helped calm stomachs. Beth's fingers moved carefully, and Cole stayed close, answering questions, occasionally brushing dust from her arm, without a single flinch. In town, men wouldn't touch her, not even bump into her by accident. But Cole touched her like it was the most natural thing in the world, like her skin didn't shame him. Later that day, while she was resting inside, she heard the sound of hooves. She pulled herself upright and peered out the window. A man on horseback was approaching. Wide hat, brown duster, boots caked in trail mud. Beth's stomach tightened. Strangers always meant danger. Cole stepped out of the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. The rider stopped near the gate and leaned slightly forward. "Greystone," he called. "Heard you took in a girl. That true?" Cole's voice was calm. "What I do on my land ain't up for gossip," the rider laughed. Folks say she's that fat Thornfield girl, the one who got herself knocked up. Some say you got a soft spot for broken things. Cole stepped closer to the gate, his shadow falling long across the dirt. You rode all the way up here, he said quietly. Just to run your mouth? The man tilted his head. Just saying. If you're raising another man's bastard, might as well charge folks to see the show. There was a pause. Then, without warning, Cole gripped the top rail of the wooden fence and ripped it free with a single brutal pull. The man's horse reared slightly. You done? Cole asked, voice like distant thunder. The rider held up both hands in mock surrender, turned his horse and rode off laughing to himself. Cole watched until the dust settled, then turned and saw Beth standing in the doorway, her face pale. I'm sorry, she said quickly. I didn't mean to cause... Cole raised one hand to stop her. Not harshly, gently. You didn't cause anything, he said. He came here to pick a fight, not with you, with me. Beth's eyes filled. That's what they think of me. They are wrong. You don't even know my whole story. I don't need to. That night, Beth cried silently into the pillow, not because she was sad, but because someone had stood up for her without being asked. No one had ever done that before. By the 4th week, Beth had taken to humming softly while folding linens. Her face glowed more, and Cole noticed, even if he didn't say a word. One day she caught him looking at her longer than usual as she stood in the sun near the porch railing, dress fluttering against her legs, one hand on her belly. She looked away, flustered, but something in her stirred. She wasn't small. She wasn't pretty. She wasn't the kind of woman men lingered on, and yet Cole's gaze didn't feel like pity. It didn't feel like tolerance. It felt real. That night, she left a folded cloth near his bedding by the fire. She'd stitched it herself, uneven, clumsy work, but made from scraps she'd found in the cupboard. On the edge, she had sewn a little C. She didn't expect him to acknowledge it, but the next morning it was tied neatly around his wrist like a band. One evening, as a mountain storm rolled low over the peaks, Beth stood by the window, watching lightning across the distant sky. Cole entered quietly, shoulders damp from the rain, and set a small bundle of firewood beside the hearth. You all right? He asked. Beth nodded. I used to be so scared of thunder when I was a girl. Cole knelt to stoke the fire. You ain't a girl anymore. No, she whispered, pressing a hand to her belly. I'm about to be someone's mother. Cole looked up at her slow and steady. You'll be a good one. She met his eyes for a moment too long, and in the flicker of firelight something passed between them. Not romance, not yet, but something quieter. Recognition. A sense that neither of them had ever truly been seen before until now. Morning mist had barely lifted off Pine Valley Ridge when Beth felt the first kick beneath her ribs. She gasped, half laugh, half sob, and pressed both palms to her belly. Easy there, little one, she whispered. Cole swung a hammer at the corral, muscles flexing under a cotton shirt. He glanced over. She's saying good morning. Beth's cheeks warmed. Still sure it's a girl? Sure as sunrise, he replied. That exchange felt like a promise. Someone expected her child with joy instead of dread. Joy, however, travels slower than gossip. Each supply run Cole made to town returned with sharper stares. One evening he laid a sealed envelope on the table. Came through the post. Beth read her father's rigid handwriting. Beth, you were taken from me. I'm coming Friday. Make yourself ready. Samuel Thornfield. He's coming, she whispered. Cole's jaw tightened. Let him. She sank onto a chair. He'll bring men. Then I'll stand taller. That night Beth lay awake listening to the wind comb through mountain pines. Memories crept in. Her father's voice quoting scripture about obedience. Her mother's gentle corrections that never softened his edges. She remembered the day the town doctor confirmed her condition. Samuel had smashed a lantern, sparks jumping like angry fireflies. He'd called her body a curse, her baby a stain. Shame had wrapped her like barbed wire ever since. Cole's cabin walls smelled of cedar and pine oil. Moonlight pooled on the floorboards, silvering the scar on Cole's sleeping shoulder. She realized she had never seen a man rest so lightly, every sense tuned to danger, even while his eyes were closed. He carried his own ghosts, but none of them bore her name. The next day, Cole sharpened axes, checked rifles, stacked blankets. He said it was for the baby, but Beth knew defense when she saw it. After a dizzy spell, he made her rest. He knelt, brushing hair from her forehead. Your work is staying safe. Why do you care? He guided her hand to an old scar across his chest. Pa gave me this when I was 13 for dropping nails. I swore no one would bleed on my land again. He closed her fingers over the scar. You won't either. Tears spilled. She pressed his hand to her cheek. 3 days before Friday, Cole began carving something from a block of pine. Beth watched from the rocker, curious. Shavings drifted like snow onto his boots. By dusk, a small cradle took shape. Smooth rails, sturdy legs, no fancy scrollwork. Pure craftsmanship. Why now? She asked. Babies don't wait for perfect times, he said. Figure yours deserves a proper start. She touched the unfinished wood. I've never owned anything made just for me. It's for her, Cole corrected with a faint smile. But she'll share. Beth laughed, a sound that startled them both. Cole looked pleased at the music of it. The next morning they tested the cradle's rock on the porch. Beth felt the baby shift as if sensing her first bed. Cole noted her wince. Pain. Only a stitch. She exhaled slowly. I'm heavier every hour. Cole fetched a bucket, knelt and soaked her swollen feet. Cool water, gentle scrubbing, rough hands, surprisingly tender. Beth closed her eyes against tears of relief. You don't have to. I do, he said. You're carrying 2 souls right now. Least I can manage is your feet. When he dried her skin with a soft cloth, she caught herself imagining those hands holding her child. The picture felt right. The final evening of the week settled hot and still. Crickets chirped. Beth rocked on the porch. Cole sharpened a bowie knife. I'm afraid, she said. Fear means your body's ready to fight, he answered. I don't want anyone hurt. I'll ask for peace first, he promised. That night, he laid a hand on her belly. Rest. Stay close. Always. Dawn broke red. Rough hoofbeats thundered up the mountain path. Beth saw her father first in the saddle, armed men flanking him. Cole, she called. He was already on the porch. Hat low, chest bare, rifle rested calmly in one hand. Samuel reined in at the gate. I'm here for my daughter, bring her out. She's where she chooses to be, Cole replied. She's pregnant with sin, Samuel barked. Beth stepped beside Cole, heart hammering. Papa? Samuel's eyes flicked to her belly. You look worse than rumor. Pain bloomed behind her ribs. Cole shifted, blocking her. Samuel signaled. The armed men dismounted, rifles rising. Nobody raises guns on my ground, Cole warned. Step aside, one man said. Cole didn't. If she won't come, we'll take the brat when it's born, Samuel snarled. Beth gasped. Cole's arm shot back, steadying her. He lifted the rifle barrel, not aiming, just reminding. Last chance. A hired gun cocked his weapon. Cole's shot cracked first. Dirt exploded inches before the man's boots. Horses reared. The gunman stumbled. Not worth it, the second muttered, mounting fast. Samuel paled. You'd shoot over her? I'll shoot to keep peace, Cole answered. Peace means you leave. Samuel glared, then wheeled his horse. Dust swallowed them. Silence. Beth's breath shook. You all right? Cole asked. She nodded, tears flowing. He said he'd take the baby. He won't. Inside, Cole poured water, knelt as she drank. I never wanted blood, she whispered. Protection sometimes looks like strength. She brushed his shoulder with trembling fingers. Thank you. He covered her hand with his. Storms passed. Sunlight broke through clouds. For the first time, Beth believed it might stay, but her father's wounded pride could still return. Inside her womb, the baby kicked, reminding her the hardest labor lay ahead. Beth whispered to the life inside. We're safe, little one. Safe for now. The cabin was warm, firelight flickering against the wooden beams, shadows dancing across the walls like memories too stubborn to die. Outside, the wind howled across the peaks of Pine Valley Ridge, but inside Beth Thornfield was cocooned in something she never expected. Safety, kindness, a man's steady presence. Cole knelt beside her with a towel, his giant hands blotting her forehead with care that was both unfamiliar and overwhelming. Her contractions came sharp now, her breath catching with each wave. She gripped the wool blanket beneath her and whimpered. You're all right, Cole murmured. You're safe here, Beth. Just look at me. She did. Through tears and pain, she looked into the deep brown of his eyes. In them was something that had never once lived in her father's. Not duty, not shame, but tenderness, real and raw. I'm scared, she whispered. I know, he said. But you've already done the hardest part, Beth. You survived them. Now you just have to meet the little soul who's been waiting for you. A shuddering sob slipped from her lips, more from relief than pain. And in that moment something broke loose in her. Not her water that had come earlier, but the final thread of guilt sewn into her soul by the man who gave her life and then gave her away. She wasn't worthless. She wasn't broken. She wasn't a burden. She was a mother. The birth was long and hard and raw. Cole never left her side, not once. He held her hand when she screamed, wiped her tears when she wept, and wrapped his arms around her when it was over. When the cabin filled with the first wild, fierce cry of a newborn. "A girl," Cole said, voice thick. "You've got yourself a strong little girl." Beth stared at the bundle in his arms. Soft pink skin, wisps of dark hair, 2 fists balled up against her chin. She couldn't breathe for a moment, couldn't believe this was real. "She's perfect," Beth breathed. "You did that," Cole said gently, handing her the baby. "You brought her here, you carried her, and you didn't give up. No one else gets to define you anymore, Beth. Not your daddy, not this town, just you and her." Beth cried then, not from shame, but joy. Her arms, so often mocked for their size, now held the most precious weight in the world. 4 days passed before word got out that Samuel Thornfield's daughter had delivered safely under the roof of Cole Greystone, the man he thought would be her punishment. Samuel arrived at dusk, riding up to Cole's cabin like a ghost from another life. He didn't bother to knock, just stormed in, eyes bloodshot and jaw clenched. "I want to see my daughter," he growled. Cole stood from the table slowly. "She's resting. You can talk to her if she's ready to talk." "I didn't give her to you to coddle, Greystone," Samuel snapped. "She's still mine." "No, sir," Cole said, calm but cold. "You gave her away, and you don't get to pick and choose what happens after." Beth stepped into the room, baby in her arms. Her dress hung loose around her soft frame, and her cheeks were still round with exhaustion, but her eyes were different now, steady, focused. "I'll talk," she said, "but not as your daughter, as myself." Samuel turned to her. "You're embarrassing me, Beth. Coming back into town with a bastard child, letting this man pretend he's your husband. I'd rather be the wife of a man who treated me like a person," she said, voice shaking but strong, "than the daughter of a man who treated me like a mistake." Samuel blinked, as if for the first time he realized the size of the shame wasn't on her body, but on his soul. "I did what I had to do." "No," she interrupted. "You did what made you feel better. You gave me away because I reminded you of your failure, not mine." The baby stirred and Cole stepped forward, placing one large hand on Beth's back. "She don't need to explain herself to you," he said. "You can leave now." Samuel opened his mouth to protest, but nothing came out. There was no threat he could make that meant anything now. So he turned, hat in hand, and left. He didn't look back. Months passed. Winter bled into spring, and Pine Valley Ridge softened with the warming earth. The town changed too, a little at first and then more. They saw the big man from the mountains riding into town, with a baby strapped to his chest and a full-figured young woman on his arm, laughing with a lightness nobody thought she could carry. They still whispered. People always do, but they whispered less because they saw her strength now, her smile, and they saw the way Cole looked at her like she hung the stars. They saw what love looked like when it wasn't wrapped in thin bodies or polished reputations, but in arms wide enough to hold you at your worst, and shoulders broad enough to carry what others discarded. Beth became a wife before summer, barefoot in the wildflower meadow behind the cabin, her dress wrapped lovingly around her hips and her baby girl giggling in Cole's arms. She kissed him slow and deep when the preacher said, "You may," and in that kiss was a whole life reclaimed. Years later, when their daughter Emma would ask about how Mama and Papa met, Beth would tell her the truth, that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads you straight to the best thing. That love doesn't always look like fairy tales. Sometimes it looks like a giant mountain man who sees beauty where others see burden, who offers shelter when the world offers shame. And Emma would grow up strong in those mountains, surrounded by wildflowers and pine trees, knowing that her mother was never abandoned. She was delivered to the man who would teach her that she was never too much, never too soft, never too broken to be loved completely. In the evenings when the mountain air grew cool and the stars appeared like scattered diamonds above Pine Valley Ridge, Cole would sit on that same porch where he first took Beth in. She would rest in his arms, their daughter playing at their feet, and they would watch the sunset paint the peaks gold and crimson. And Beth would remember that cold morning when her father dragged her up that mountain path, convinced he was discarding his greatest shame. How wrong he had been. He hadn't thrown her away at all. He had unknowingly delivered her straight into the arms of her destiny, to a love so fierce and true that it would echo through these mountains for generations to come. Sometimes the people who should protect us are the ones who cast us aside, but sometimes, in the mysterious way that life unfolds, being cast aside is exactly what leads us home. The mountain winds still blow through Pine Valley Ridge, carrying with them the scent of wildflowers and the echo of laughter. They carry the story of a woman who was told she was worthless and discovered she was priceless, of a man who lived alone in the wilderness until he found someone worth sharing it with, of a love that bloomed not despite their scars but because of them. And if you listen closely to those mountain winds, they'll tell you something else too. That strength isn't measured by the size of your body or the approval of others. It's measured by your ability to love when the world tells you you're unlovable, to hope when hope seems foolish, and to believe that somewhere in this vast wilderness, there's a place where you belong exactly as you are. Beth Thornfield learned that truth on a dusty mountain path, when her father's cruelty became her greatest gift, when being given away became being found, when shame transformed into something far more powerful, the unshakable knowledge that she was exactly where she was meant to be, in the arms of a man who saw her heart before he ever saw anything else. That's the thing about real love. It doesn't see flaws to fix or burdens to bear. It sees souls to cherish and stories to honor. And in the quiet sanctuary of Cole Greystone's mountain cabin, Beth finally understood what it meant to be home. The mountains remember everything. They remember her tears, her fears, her transformation from a broken girl into a woman who knew her worth. They remember the sound of Emma's first cry echoing through the valley, the gentle rumble of Cole's laughter, and the soft whisper of Beth's voice as she finally learned to speak her own name with pride. And as the sun sets behind those ancient peaks, painting the sky in shades of hope, the mountains keep their promise. They hold this story safe, this testament to the truth that sometimes the greatest love stories begin not with a prince on a white horse, but with a gentle giant who sees beauty where the world sees shame, and who proves that home isn't a place on any map. It's the sound of someone saying your name like it's the most precious word they know. Stories that don't just entertain but leave a mark. Subscribe, share, and above all, keep believing that true love can still change destiny, because sometimes just one decision suffices to begin again. If this story touched your heart, tell me about it. Leave a comment sharing which part moved you the most and what you learned from it. And this was only the beginning. The next story will surprise you in ways you can't imagine. Click on the video appearing on your screen and get ready to feel even more moved.